All right, what's up, guys? I want to rehearse the synchronicities. I've had some of the biggest ones and see like, are these legit or am I in psychosis? Am I crazy? I'm trying to learn this manifestation thing. I have learned it. Actually, that's not true. I'm trying to practice these techniques. And supposedly, when you're on the right track and you're interacting with the universe properly and you're at the highest vibration and you're living in a frequency that matches the goals you're trying to hit, you start having very strong coincidences that are just too strong to say, oh, that doesn't mean anything. And so I wanted to review some of those and see, do you think these are synchronicities or am I in psychosis? Because I've also been in a place, and it's temporary, where everything becomes a sign and I'm looking too much. The most meaningful ones are when I'm not looking and I'm living my best life and enjoying myself and something pops up that directly aligns with my goal and I'm like, that makes sense. But then if I'm looking for them, man, I can find them in places that aren't real. So I wanted to check these out. The first was, so I started a podcast, and what came to mind was like this concept of elderly people and sitting down with them and wanting to get their life advice and their input and ask them questions and just hear like, dude, what have you got for us? Like, what pitfalls can we avoid? What wisdom can we gain from you? And so I just had this draw towards interviewing old people, and I started trying to actively pursue it. And so one day I left to go to a retirement home and start asking, hey, are there any elderly people that would be willing to do this that you think are qualified and blah, blah, blah. Before I got there, I was like, you know what, I'm not in the right mood for this today. Like, I don't know. And so I decided to go to Costco, and I'm in Costco and I run into a guy who owns, his name is Sam. I did a podcast with him. So it's an episode I'm comfortable giving his name, but his name is Sam, and he owns a hospice center, and I'm pretty sure he's an angel and either knows it and isn't telling us or doesn't know it. But this guy's helped about 100 people pass on, transition to the next life, and he's learned things that you can't get from anywhere else. And he teaches those. He explains miracles. He talks about, anyways, so I'm like, wow, I wonder if this is a coincidence. This guy's whole life is old people, and I've been looking for something to do with old people, because that's another thing. A lot of times exactly what I think I want shows up in a variation or a different form, and I'm like, oh, that's definitely better. So instead of interviewing 50 old people, why don't I interview one guy who represents an infinite amount of old people? I feel kind of bad saying old people. I mean, that is what it is, but so anyways, I told him about the podcast. He said, hey, I think so. I'm nervous though. I have a language barrier. He's Korean. Super sweet dude, man. I mean, it's just watching this guy is just incredible. You should check the episode out. It's called Hospice Miracle Stories. But anyways, shameless plug, not trying to do that. It's just important because this is him. He said he was interested, send questions so he can rehearse and blah, blah, blah. Check in after the holidays. So 5, 6 weeks go by. I haven't thought about him. I haven't reached out or anything. I send him a text. Hey, Sam, just checking in. Like, did you have a chance to review those questions? And what do you think? You still have interest? He calls me immediately and said, I can't believe this. I'm literally on my TV looking for your show right now, and I can't find your show. And you called me, interrupted what I'm doing. He's like, well, wow. He was just kind of blown away. And he said, yes, I want to do it. He's like, give me some time. So I gave him 3, 4, 5 more weeks or whatever, having no contact or whatever. Reached out to him and said, hey, what's up, Sam? You see the questions? Like, what do you think? Any feedback? And he called me again and he said, oh, you're not going to believe this. He's like, you're not going to believe this, but I just finished the questions and I made the intention 3 minutes ago that I'm definitely going to call Trevor, and you called me almost at that exact time. And so I took that as a sign of, yes, this interview needs to happen. That seemed like those two things, that just seems too big to be a coincidence. And so I took that as a sign, yes, do the interview. And I think it was a beautiful interview. Second one, this is kind of smaller, but a close family friend was over. There's 8 of these, and some of them are very profound, like that one I just rehearsed with Sam. But talking a little fast, overcompensated, overcaffeinated, sorry. Family friend came over and asked, hey, how do you get guests? Like, what kind of guests are you looking for? And I said, well, I'm interested in elderly people. I love talking to immigrants on Uber drivers, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, hey, I have a friend of mine whose mom is fled religious persecution and came here legally, and she's got an incredible story. And I said, wow, that's awesome. The next day, that mom's son, who I've only met once, like 6 months ago, reached out and asked me, hey, I'm just totally curious, but how do you get your guests? What are the odds of that? Where the day before somebody says, hey, my friend's mom might be a good guess. The next day, that the person reaches out and it's his mom who's the person in reference from the day before. I didn't end up doing a podcast with her, but that's cool. So the next one is very profound to me. My daughter is a cancer survivor. She beat it. Couple operations. She's got little, she lives in pain, has some mobility issues that she will completely grow out of. But we recently got the all clear as like 2 days ago. We just found out scans are good. For the fourth time, we can move to once yearly scans. Like, we're confident this is gone. Huge. But anyways, in this process, one of the things that UCSF recommended doing was genetic testing. And then our oncology doctor said, hey, be careful, because if you test anyone's genes, you're going to see crazy stuff in there that's going to freak you out. Just because you have the genes for something doesn't mean that the gene has expressed itself and you have that disease or that deformity or whatever it is. So we're like, okay, whatever. They sent us the genetic kit. It's just a cheek swab. It sat in our drawer for months. And I woke up one day, we haven't talked about this or heard from doctors or anything for months. And I asked my wife first thing in the morning, like, hey, should we do that gene test? And she's like, man, I don't know. Why? I'm like, I don't even know why I asked that. Same day, that person running that program reached out and said, hey guys, I noticed this is still outstanding. Do you still have an interest in doing that? What are the odds? That's I don't know how to do odd calculations, but that's insane. Months of not even thinking or talking about this. I feel compelled to ask my wife about it out of nowhere. The same day the person reaches out. So that appeared to me that, yes, I need to move that way and do that test. And guess what? The test was amazing. She has no genetic predisposition to cancer. There is no threat. She doesn't need extra monitoring. It was a great peace of mind for my wife and I. So synchronicity, I don't know. Another one, and this is smaller, but I had a guest on, Tamira Sandifer, who lives her whole life helping other people, and she is super in tune with this stuff. She knows how to make reality bend and flow. She knows how to read the signs and God's signs. She's a very religious person doing this stuff, which is cool. I know religious people doing manifesting, spiritual people doing manifesting, atheists doing manifesting. It seems to be more of a scientific thing than like a woo-woo or a necessary cage of philosophical or religious beliefs to access. Anyways, her thing, I asked her, how do you hear from God? And she goes, well, God gives me red lights. If I make a decision to go a certain way and it's not supposed to happen, God stops it, and I don't fight that. And I'm like, okay, cool. And so she's like, if it's all green lights, you go. I was explaining this to my wife like a month after the podcast, and we were in the car, and I get interrupted by my phone going off. And I'm literally explaining green light, blah, blah, blah. And it's Miss T is what she goes by. And she said, all green lights, baby, go. What are the odds of that? Like, I hadn't texted her since the podcast. It'd been a month. I'm telling my wife about her and her method. And then she texts me a confirmation from the method. I don't know, man. Am I crazy? Another one, a guest came on my show, Steve Sachs. He's a two-time World Series champion, MLB All-Star, Rookie of the Year, Silver Slugger Award. He crushed it. Long career in the MLB. And I wanted to invite him on, but unfortunately, it's horrible, guys, but his son passed in a military accident a couple years ago. And so I didn't want to reach out and have him think like, I want you to talk about your son. I just didn't want to. I'm just like, I can't risk him thinking that I'm only asking him on the podcast to talk about his son, which I told him we do not have to. But anyways, I'm pondering with it. Totally randomly, another person reached out and said, hey, I know you're looking for guests. I have a networking group with Steve Sachs. Like, are you interested in doing him? He'd probably want to do it. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I am. Turned out to be a beautiful podcast. And he did talk about his son. It was the first time on camera, and it was just an amazing experience. So that was pretty cool. And then I want to talk about a time I tested manifestation. My daughter and I went to a school function, like a daddy-daughter ball, where they have games set up and, they're free to play, and you win raffle tickets, 5, 10 at a time, 100 at a time, or whatever. And you play for like 2 or 3 hours, and there's all these games. And so kids just have handfuls of tickets, like Chuck E. Cheese style, just going in and dumping it in these wine barrels, 2 or 3 wine barrels filled 1/3 to halfway of tickets, thousands of tickets that these kids are. So my daughter and I, we didn't want to carry the tickets around, whatever. I'm like, there's no point in like putting it in there. And whatever. And so we put in 2 tickets into this whole thing, and they spend someone gets in there and mixes the tickets up or whatever. There's kids walked up with bushels, hundreds and hundreds of tickets. There's thousands of tickets. We put in 2 tickets. I'm not kidding. And I put them in and I said, you know what, I'm gonna test this. I'm gonna test this thing. And I said, I know this is gonna win. And I sat there and I imagined how cool that was gonna be to feel that feeling of knowing that, oh my gosh, manifestation works. Like, this is amazing. I can't believe it works. And then um, fear would come in. And my logical brain would say, dude, stop it. You're being ridiculous. And I would say, no, I'll show you. And so even though fear was coming in, I would just squash it with confidence, fake confidence at times. And I'm just sitting there talking. I had forgot about it. I let it go. And I just realized that right now. Can't focus on them too much, apparently. But I let it go. And all of a sudden it gets announced my daughter won 2 tickets. And I mean, come on. Like, that's pretty cool. The last 2 I'll try to do quick. This is one of my wife's favorite, but she's, a year and a half ago, we were hanging out and she was like, hey, I want you to remember the word bird. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, I don't know, but it's bouncing around in my head and I feel like I need to tell you that. So let's remember bird. And so, all right. Year and a half later, she's like, man, like birds are like flying past my window. And like, I feel like there's something going on. Like, I want to start feeding birds. And so we get a bird feeder and I'm like, okay, cool. And all of a sudden she's looking out one day and she sees an egret out in a dry field where there just really shouldn't be an egret. They like ponds and hunting for little fish and things like that. It made no sense. And she really, for whatever reason, connected with this bird 40, 50 yards out, or no, more like a couple hundred yards out. And I'm like, what's the big deal? It's a bird, And all of a sudden that bird flies by us. And I'm like, okay, whatever, coincidence. She's like, no, I think that means something. And well, I said, what do you think it means? She said, I think it means that we're on the right track and that everything's going to be okay. Because there is a lot of uncertainty in our life right now. And that's okay. Everything great requires going through what I'm going through right now. A grind that you're not sure where it goes, one foot in front of the other into the unknown, people telling you you're crazy, and you have a calling and a belief and you're willing to do as much work and time as it takes to have that hit. That's where we're at. So she viewed that bird, seeing it, having it fly over, as a sign that we're good, keep doing what we're doing. And so we're talking about that. And I said, no, okay, you saw a bird, and then the odds of it flying by, that's decent, but I'm not impressed. And as I'm talking smack, the bird flies back by us, even closer this time. So she loves that one. I'm still not super sold on that. That's explainable. I mean, birds fly around, The other stuff that I like, the Sam one and the gene test and the daddy-daughter ball, those aren't, I mean, if you boil it down, they're all explainable. But anyway, so the last one was just a couple days ago, and it was right after we didn't hit the manifestation goal in July, which I'm okay with. It's just going to keep going, keep trying, and look at what I can change in myself to continue to become an expert manifester. I want to get up there with all the greats doing their thing, and they've created a life that's beautiful for them, for their family, and it helps other people. That's what I'm trying to do. And so we're just talking through what we could do different, and then we're talking about Hawaii, because moving to Kauai is a really big goal of ours, and it's not a goal, it's a reality, and we are already living that type of life, and it's going to come to it. Just feels like it's already happened. I'm just going through the footwork of getting there. And so we're talking about this and we're reaffirming, like getting each other excited and sitting in that frequency of Kauai. And oh my gosh, can you imagine a slower life and getting 50% of our calories from our own land? And we have a very detailed plan on what we're going to do. And then we see a Hawaii license plate. She's like, look at that. And I'm like, I can't remember the last time I've seen I've seen Hawaii stickers, but an actual plate of a car from Hawaii. So nothing crazy there, but it's still cool. I don't know. And I have a lot more like that, but those are the ones that I kind of wrote down to feel like sharing. And I read them when I feel like things aren't going well, I read some of those because to me, they're not explainable, and hope it means I'm on the right track. If anybody has any tips, let me know. All right, guys.